Archangel Michael comes now with wings cloaked in holy fire and eyes ablaze with ancient wisdom, standing not merely as a messenger, but as a warrior of heaven assigned specifically to you. He says to your soul what no one else has been able to utter aloud, what even you haven't fully realized yet. Your silence has not been weakness. It has been strategy, divinely orchestrated, heaven-anointed strategy. While the world mistook your quiet for defeat, while others interpreted your distance as disinterest, the heavens knew the truth. Your silence has been your strongest spiritual weapon. In the stillness where no one saw your tears, no one heard your cries, and no one witnessed your inner battles, the greatest war was being won. Because in that silence, you weren't just enduring, you were aligning. You weren't just withdrawing, you were being trained. You weren't just avoiding chaos, you were anchoring to heaven. Every moment you kept quiet when you wanted to speak up, when your flesh ached for vengeance, but your soul chose restraint. The spiritual realm took notice. Angels stood guard around you not because you were fragile, but because your strength in choosing sacred silence made you a high-value target in the enemy's eyes. And Michael says now, you are being fortified, not forgotten. You are being hidden, not overlooked. Heaven was watching every silent surrender, every internal prayer, every battle you chose to let God fight on your behalf instead of reacting in the flesh. You didn't realize it, but every time you held your tongue, you disarmed a trap. Every time you walked away instead of proving your point, you confused hell itself. Because Satan doesn't know how to handle a child of God who can sit in the fire and not scream. Your silence wasn't passive. It was prophetic. It was the shield that protected you from battles that weren't yours to fight. It was the cloak that kept you covered while God rearranged every battlefield behind the scenes. While they mocked you for staying quiet, God was rewriting your destiny. While they whispered about your absence, heaven was announcing your arrival in realms they couldn't hear. You've been misjudged, misunderstood, and mislabeled, but that was the point. Your silence made you untrackable. The enemy couldn't trace your strategy because your power wasn't loud, it was sacred. Archangel Michael says, there are scrolls in heaven sealed with your name, filled with records of every moment you wanted to fight but chose to pray instead. Every time you bit your tongue and offered grace, a ripple echoed through the spiritual dimensions, and chains were broken in your bloodline because of it. You didn't even know you were waging war, but heaven did. That quiet posture of surrender, that daily choice to turn inward and upward instead of outward and reactive, made you a spiritual giant even when you felt like a ghost in your own life. The ones who talk the loudest haven't moved a single realm. But you, yes you, the one who stayed quiet and kept moving, have shifted destinies and summoned divine power by simply refusing to play the enemy's game. And now, Michael whispers with the thunder of eternity behind him. Because you remained silent when others spoke recklessly, because you hid yourself when your ego longed to be seen, because you chose obedience over applause, the time has come for the silence to speak for itself. And when it does, it will not whisper, it will roar. What's coming will not require your explanation, your defense, or your justification. It will speak through favor, through elevation, through divine alignment that cannot be argued with. You are not behind. You are being built in the shadows. You are not forgotten. You are being armed in silence. You are not weak. You are dangerous. And the heavens are now releasing you, not as a victim, but as a weapon of glory forged in the quietest fire. And this is only the beginning. Archangel Michael returns with a message wrapped in divine thunder and soaked in the oil of sacred revelation. And this time, his words carry the weight of what your silence has been birthing all along. He says, "Child of God, while you were silent, seeds were being planted in realms you couldn't see, seeds that were watered by your tears, nurtured by your patience, and protected by your refusal to respond to the noise around you. What you thought was isolation was actually insulation, and what you thought was rejection was divine redirection into a place of spiritual maturity no noise could ever bring you. You weren't being left behind. You were being taken ahead, ahead of your time, ahead of their reach, ahead of the traps that were secretly being set for you. In your silence, Michael says, you became invisible to the enemy's surveillance. Your name was being lifted in heavenly councils, while people on earth were erasing you from their stories. But God didn't need you loud to be heard. He needed you still to be strategic. You kept waiting for breakthrough, for someone to notice, for something to change. But what you didn't realize is that the silence was the strategy and the delay was divine defense. Do you know how many arrows miss you simply because you chose to stay quiet? How many curses were redirected because you didn't retaliate? How many lies collapsed under their own weight because you refused to speak against them? Archangel Michael says your restraint summoned angels with flaming swords. Your silence made room for God's voice to thunder louder than yours ever could. And now, the realms of heaven are in motion, releasing justice not just for what was done to you, but for how you responded. Michael says this reward will be public because your restraint was private. What they did behind your back will now be answered in front of your face, but not with vengeance, with vindication. Not with shouting, but with glory. You thought you missed your moment, but the truth is your moment was building in silence like a volcano underneath the surface. And now heaven is about to erupt on your behalf. The silence wasn't wasted time. It was the cocoon. It was where the transformation took place. While they were busy flying around in temporary recognition, you were metamorphosing into something eternal, something spiritual, something undeniable. The reason the attacks didn't stop is because the enemy saw who you were becoming before you did. He heard the whispers of angels saying, "This one will rise in power if they don't break." And you didn't. You didn't break. You bent, you wept, you cracked open, but your spirit stayed anchored, and now the ground is trembling under the weight of what heaven is about to drop in your life. Archangel Michael says you don't even need to speak in this next chapter. Your existence will echo louder than any argument. Your glow will outshine their gossip. Your elevation will silence every opinion. And best of all, your silence has preserved your purity, your discernment, and your divine timing, which are now the keys to unlocking what others forfeited trying to prove themselves. You stayed hidden, but now heaven says, it's time. The season of silence is turning into a season of sound. Not noise, but praise. Not drama, but divine release. Not confusion, but clarity so bright even your enemies will have no choice but to step back and say, surely the hand of God is on this one. And Michael leans closer now, placing a flaming hand over your spirit and declaring with holy fire, The silence you endured will now speak in signs, in wonders, in miracles too loud to deny. You're not just rising, you're being resurrected, and no one can stop what's coming. Archangel Michael's voice now rolls through the heavens like a divine storm, thunderous and commanding, revealing to you a truth so profound that it reshapes the very foundation of your soul's journey. He says that your silence has not only protected you, but has been the very fabric that God used to weave your destiny into a masterpiece of glory and power. In this sacred quiet, every unanswered question, every held back word, every painful moment where your spirit refused to scream or retaliate was a divine covenant being forged between your heart and the Almighty. You thought you were alone, that no one saw your suffering or the battles you fought in secret. But Archangel Michael assures you that the angels themselves stood beside you, guarding your heart, strengthening your spirit, and preparing you for a purpose far greater than you ever dreamed. Your silence, far from being emptiness or weakness, was a mighty fortress, impenetrable to the lies, betrayals, and attacks designed to derail your God-given mission. The enemy marveled at your restraint, confused by your refusal to engage in chaos, because they could not understand that your quiet was the loudest roar in the spirit realm. Each time you swallowed the bitter pill of injustice, chose peace over anger, or withheld your voice when provoked, you dismantled strongholds around your life, breaking generational curses and spiritual chains that no visible battle could touch. Michael says this was no accident. It was a divine strategy tailor-made for you, designed to build a spiritual immunity that would not only shield you from future attacks, but would empower you to become a beacon of hope, strength, and transformation for others walking through their own storms. He reminds you that the stillness was where God's power was being cultivated within you, where the Holy Spirit was refining your character, teaching you endurance, patience, and humility that no victory born of shouting or strife could ever produce. This silence also became your sacred altar, a holy place of encounter where your faith deepened beyond human comprehension, where your spirit was recharged, and where God whispered the secrets of your true identity and purpose, far from the noise and distractions of this world. And now, as heaven's appointed warrior, Michael reveals that the time is at hand for this silence to be shattered, not by your voice, but by divine manifestation. What you've held back for so long will now explode forth in blessings, breakthroughs, and glory that will confound your enemies, uplift the weary, and inspire the brokenhearted. The chains you once bore in silence are being broken. The walls that confined your potential are crumbling, and the path that was once hidden is now illuminated with unquenchable light. Michael declares with unwavering authority that the days of being overlooked, underestimated, and misunderstood are over. The heavens are aligning to elevate you beyond your wildest dreams, and your silent endurance is the testimony that will shake the spiritual and physical realms alike. You are no longer the quiet victim, but the victorious warrior whose very silence has become a weapon of unprecedented spiritual warfare. Your restraint is signal to heaven to release favor. Your patience a beacon calling angels to your side, and your unwavering faith the catalyst for miracles that will echo for generations. And so Archangel Michael urges you now to prepare yourself to rise as never before, to walk boldly into your divine destiny, and to let your silence be heard across the heavens as the strongest declaration of God's power, love, and purpose working mightily in your life. Because what you held back is not lost. It is reserved, ready to be unleashed in a way so powerful, so glorious, and so undeniable that it will leave no doubt in any heart or mind that God's hand has been upon you from the very beginning, and that your silence was indeed your greatest spiritual weapon all along. Archangel Michael's presence surrounds you now with a heavenly fire that burns away every last trace of doubt, fear, and confusion that has tried to silence your soul. And with a voice filled with both love and fierce authority, he reveals that your silence was never meant to be your prison, but your sanctuary, a sacred space where your spirit was fortified by divine strength that no earthly battle could ever break. A place where God's hand carefully crafted a weapon unlike any other, a weapon forged in the depths of patience, perseverance, and unwavering faith. And though you may have questioned your quiet endurance in moments of loneliness or despair, Michael reminds you that every tear held back, every harsh word swallowed, every moment of restraint was a powerful prayer sent upward, a seed planted in the fertile soil of heaven that has been growing roots beneath the surface of your life. Invisible to human eyes, but potent and mighty in the spiritual realm, now bursting forth like a mighty tree that will shelter and inspire all who come near it. The silence you maintained was a divine act of rebellion against the chaos and lies that sought to define you, a refusal to be dragged down into bitterness, anger, or revenge. And this holy restraint was the armor that shielded you from the spiritual darts aimed at your heart, the fortress that preserved your dignity and your soul's destiny, even when it felt like you were walking through the valley of the shadow of death. Michael declares that your silence has confused your enemies and perplexed the powers of darkness because they expected you to fall, to lash out, to give up, but instead, you became a quiet storm, a stillness so profound it held the tension of a divine explosion waiting to be released, a calm before the breakthrough that will shake the very foundations of your world and beyond. Now, that moment of release is near, and Michael commands you to prepare to step into a new season where your silence will give way to the loudest declarations of victory ever heard in your life. The prayers you whispered in the shadows will rise like incense before the throne of God. Your withheld words will become testimonies that ignite hope in the hearts of millions, and your patient endurance will be crowned with honor, blessings, and unprecedented spiritual authority. He tells you that this is the divine exchange, the sacred transfer where what you lost in silence will be returned to you 100-fold, where the invisible battles you fought in the stillness will now be visible triumphs celebrated by heaven and earth alike. And as your spiritual weapon, your silence transforms into a mighty roar of justice, healing, and restoration, breaking every chain, overturning every scheme of the enemy, and calling forth angels to march beside you in every step of your journey forward. Michael's words resonate deep within your spirit. Do not be afraid to finally raise your voice, not with anger or bitterness, but with the authority of one who has been tested, refined, and chosen by God Himself. For your story will become the anthem of freedom for those who are still trapped in silence, a beacon of light for those lost in despair, and a testament that even in the quietest moments, God's power is at work, crafting miracles that defy human understanding. He urges you now to claim your rightful place as a warrior of light whose silence was not absence, but presence, whose restraint was not weakness, but power, and whose faithfulness in the shadows has positioned you to shine brighter than ever before. The heavens are shouting your name. The angels are ready to lift you higher, and the spiritual realms are aligned to open doors that have been closed for too long, all because your silence was the greatest spiritual weapon God could have given you. And now, with that weapon in hand, you are unstoppable, unbreakable, and destined to fulfill your divine purpose beyond anything you dare to imagine. Step forward boldly, beloved, for the time of your breakthrough has come, and Archangel Michael stands with you, roaring with victory, declaring that your silence has not been wasted. It has been the foundation of your greatest triumph.